Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. You're watching Business at 9 with me, Sumita Kareer. And our top story this hour and our big debate this hour. Well, former US president is now acceptable to Americans. At least 49% of them, according to a poll conducted by CNN, have voted in favor of Trump. Most Americans now see, in retrospect, Trump's presidency as a success. Can you believe? Negative views of Biden arise from his handling of jobs, economy, inflation, even the war between Israel and Gaza. Ratings remain starkly negative also because of personal finance as well, and amongst young people, people of color, and those with lower incomes. Other priority issues for the upcoming election include protecting democracy, immigration, abortion, crime, and gun violence. So the big question is this US election about Trump being an antidote to Biden? If yes, how did things change so drastically from 2020? And can the polls still swing in favor of Biden, or will the election be all about choosing the lesser flawed candidate? To discuss this further, we're now joined by Peter Cardillo, Chief Market Economist, Spartan Capital Securities LLC. Thanks very much, Mr. Cardillo, for joining us this evening to discuss this big story. I want to first understand from you, this is a humongous shift, a huge shift in thinking as far as the American electorate is concerned. A big stance, a big change in stance really reflected from 2020. Now more Americans are seeing Trump as a better option than President Biden. What's really driven this disenchantment in these numbers?
Well, I think, right now there are a few things that are going against Biden. And of course, that is the war in Israel. That's an added factor. And of course, we do have inflation that's rather sticky, although inflation has come down a lot since the pandemic. And of course, we also have high interest rates. But then again, there are other factors where where Biden is not really being credited for. And that is for an economy that's continuing to grow close to 2%, probably to a little bit over 2% for all of 2024. And also, another good barometer for the economy is the stock market. And the stock market certainly has done quite well under the Biden administration. So I think, the change here in the polls is probably due to the fact that this latest protest here by university students is basically going against Biden at this time. Now, the question is, we're still 7 months away before the elections, and these numbers could change. I mean, yeah, he's 49, 43, according to the latest polls. But if you look back, when Biden was running against Trump, and Trump was the incumbent, and now obviously it's the reverse, Trump had a fairly large lead at this time, in this time of the elections. So this could change rather rapidly. And don't forget, if Biden could arrange a peace deal within the next 60 days between Israel and Gaza and Hamas, I think those numbers would reverse again.
Right. Right, Mr. Cardillo. So very important points that you've mentioned over here. The most important being that a peace deal, if that gets finalized, probably results will shift in Mr. Biden's favor. But let me specifically ask you about the economy issue. The economy is slowing down basis recent GDP data. Inflation is also driving up. Surely Mr. Biden has a tough task ahead of him. And given Secretary Janet Yellen's commentary coming in around the economy firing on all cylinders, I want to understand from you a realistic assessment of where things stand now, because if you really see the CNN poll, a lot of youngsters are really disenchanted with Mr. Biden due to the crisis around jobs, around economy, around inflation numbers, cost of living, etc.
Yeah, well, again, you have to realize the economy has slowed down. There's no question about that. That was the aim of the Federal Reserve to slow down the economy and to bring down inflation. And that actually was working. Of course, since the beginning of the year, we had a reversal, and some of that is attributed to what we call sticky inflation, and by that I mean companies are not lowering their prices. What they're doing is they're giving you less for your money, and so that's another reason why inflation continues to stay sticky. And if you
of inflation,
look, if you look at the whole of the economy, right, with interest rates
right.
above, I'm sorry, with yields above 5%.
Right, Mr. Cardillo. So that's precisely my question is around battling inflation. Now, experts are factoring in one rate cut this year, which could happen only in the latter half of this year. Surely that doesn't look like it's coming anytime soon. And they also say that it's difficult for inflation to come within the Fed's target of 2%. Your take on that?
Look, no one ever said that the Feds were going to bring down inflation in 2024. There's a possibility of that happening in 2025. Now, the Fed here is also in somewhat of a bind. You might say a political bind. They can't lower interest rates because then they would be basically favoring Biden if inflation is still sticky. So I just think we have to wait and see in the second half of the year, which I think prices should come down. And remember, another big factor here is energy prices that have added to inflation. And now with the driving season coming up, gasoline prices are probably going to tick a little bit higher before they go lower. So that means we might still have another month or two of sticky inflation, but then after that, I think inflation comes down. Now, if inflation doesn't come down, obviously we're not looking at a rate cut this year. I don't think we'll see a rate hike, but I don't think, the chances of a rate cut have been scaled back to the point where the market now is looking for rates to stay elevated.
Right. One final question before we let you go, Mr. Cardillo. I want to ask you, with the current numbers around inflation, GDP, etc., do you rule out a hard landing then for the U.S. economy?
I thought we would be in recession by now, but obviously I was wrong, and because the economy proved me wrong. But it now appears that a hard landing is not likely to happen until maybe 2025 if interest rates continue to stay where they're at present levels. So a soft landing is probably what we're looking at.
All right, Mr. Cardillo, a soft landing is what the U.S. economy is looking at ahead of those crucial presidential polls, which are slated later this year. And on that note, thanks very much for joining us and sharing your views and your perspectives on this big story.